Good evening. Welcome to the May 9th, 2022 meeting of the Historic Zoning Commission. I'd like to call the meeting to order at this time. And please silence your cell phones if you haven't already done so. Our first item tonight is to entertain a motion to approve the March 14th, 2022 minutes. Is there such a motion?
So moved with comment.
Okay, Mary. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Lisa. All right, Mary.
I made a bunch of notes in these, and I don't think any of them have to do with the meaning. It's just kind of misused words. So if it's okay, I'll just give the copy I marked up to Amanda.
I think that's appropriate. We need to, does that work?
Rather than
Does that
go
work?
through.
If
Mayor Cruz?
they're not substantive, that's
no.
fine.
I'm sorry, what?
If they're not substantive, that's fine. And
I
on that
agree.
note, the city is working with a transcriptionist to start some of the minutes for the commissions that the planning department liaises. That would include this commission, planning commission, board of zoning appeals, et cetera. There is a little bit of a learning curve, so we're working through it. So you can see that the April minute formatting's a little bit more on par with what you're used to seeing. So we'll work through those growing pains, and we'll be adding a couple of different features to it to be more indicative of what you usually see. But I appreciate your patience as we work through that.
So unless there are substantial changes or substantive changes,
They're not.
then I think we can move along with that.
So,
Chair, I
Amanda.
do have a comment.
Okay.
Maybe substantial.
All right. All right.
That would be on page 4 in the 9th paragraph. What it states is that Commissioner Laster stated that BOMA voted against rezoning this area as state residential. And what it should
Yeah.
be is that Commissioner Laster stated that BOMA they voted yes to rezone this as a state residential.
Well,
So that completely changes the meaning.
I did note that, but I thought that was a misuse of word, that a state needed to be in there.
It does, but it says they voted against it and BOMA voted for it.
For it, that's true. That's true.
Okay, is there anything else? Any other comments? All right, then all in favor of the motions as presented, please say aye.
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 And I'm abstaining because I wasn't here.
And I'm going to abstain because I was not here either. So
Okay, 2 abstentions. All right, then it is 5-2, I think, if I got my head count right. Yeah, 5-2 and 2 abstentions. All right, then we have the April 11th minutes. Is there a motion on those?
Move to approve, Mr. Chair.
Is that Brian?
That's correct.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tyler. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, unanimous. All right, Amanda, announcements?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I did want to announce a handful of things. For the attendees, I wanted to note that item number 1, which is the consideration of alterations at 239 Franklin Road, the park at Harlansdale Farm, has been withdrawn by the applicant. We are still awaiting some comments from the State Historic Preservation Office, which we find to be very important to this overall process, and we wanted to make sure that you had that information before you considered the item. So we've withdrawn that, and we'll keep you up to date and the public up to date on when that will come
Do
forward.
you want this back?
No, you can keep that, if you wouldn't mind
Oh.
recycling it. We'll get you some updated plans when we have those available, as well as those comments we mentioned.
Okay.
I also wanted to note that the next regular DRC meeting is on Monday, a week from today, the 16th at 4 p.m. here in this room. I do not have an item count. I think it's somewhere around 6 or 7 at the moment. We also have rescheduled a special design review committee meeting for the factory at Franklin, which is on Franklin Road. It had to be canceled due to inclement weather. It was scheduled for the 25th of last month. So that'll take place on Tuesday, the 17th at 3:30. We will be convening in front of the main entrance, which is Building 11, at 3:30. And the applicant will be going over some proposed alterations to parking and hardscapes at the property. I'll get you a plan set for that as soon as I can. We also have a really exciting meeting tomorrow night, the Board of Mayor and Alderman work session. The Board of Mayor and Alderman will be hearing from staff about the proposed updates to the Historic District Design Guidelines. So if you are available and interested, we'd love for you to come and support. That'll be at 5:30. We are item number 5 on that agenda, and they'll be here in this room tomorrow night. I'll also be presenting, as part of National Preservation Month, a proclamation with the mayor will be declaring this month as National Preservation Month at the regular voting session at 7 p.m. tomorrow night.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, are there any items that need to be put on our agenda as a non-agenda item? Okay. Hearing none, we will move on to citizens' comments for items not on the agenda. These are for items not included on the agenda, but we make no decisions or consideration of action or citizen comments except to refer the matter to the planning director. And let's see, we don't have any, I don't think we have any of that. She said she talked to legal, they didn't need to do that. I don't know who she talked to. Okay, our next item there is consideration recommendation request to the Board of Zoning Appeals as related to floodplain construction standards at 252 Fifth Avenue North. Sam Johnson, applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm turning on my screen. Everyone can see the screen? Okay.
Yeah, you come on up. Do you want to make any comments first, Amanda?
Yes, I'd like to present the report.
Okay, all right.
So Ms. Hensley's not here tonight. She did prepare a number of these reports, but I'll be presenting all this evening.
All right.
Okay, so the item number 1 was pulled. The item here is item number 2. The applicant is requesting a formal recommendation from this commission, the Historic Zoning Commission, to present to the Board of Zoning Appeals as related to some zoning ordinance requirements for the building's finished floor elevation, should substantial improvement be undertaken. This applicant did appear before the DRC to discuss the request during its April meeting. So to try to make this as least complicated as possible, the amount of investment the applicant would like to put into the property is likely to trigger what's called substantial improvement, which is improving the value of the building more than 50%. Which in accordance with the Franklin zoning ordinance would require that the building meet all the applicable codes and zoning ordinance requirements, which includes our floodplain requirements. This building is located in the floodplain fringe overlay. With that, the requirements would be that the building be elevated to no lower than 1 foot above base flood elevation. Base flood elevation differs from property to property, as you would expect. And in this case, to elevate the building 1 foot above base flood elevation, the building would need to be elevated 8 feet 6 inches from its current finished floor. So you can see on the screen the applicant in front of the building indicating where the finished floor would be at that red line if the building were to be elevated to the degree required by the zoning ordinance. So the applicant is requesting that a variance be considered for this because the finished floor elevation would have to be elevated to a degree that it would, in his opinion, no longer maintain the building's historic status. The zoning ordinance does allow the Board of Zoning Appeals to hear variance requests from the floodplain protection section of the zoning ordinance, specifically variances that may be used for the repair and rehabilitation of historic buildings can be granted. Because this building is historic and the applicant believes that elevating it to meet the standards of the zoning ordinance would compromise its historic status, he is making this application. So as part of that, because it deals with historic buildings, the city requires that the Historic Zoning Commission make a formal recommendation to the Board of Zoning Appeals so that the Board of Zoning Appeals can consider your recommendation as it makes a determination of whether or not a variance should be issued. The applicant has provided in your packet several photographs that show how the building would look if it were to be elevated to meet the requirements of the zoning ordinance. Again, this would be 8 feet, 6 inches from its current grade, roughly that red line. You can see it on the left side. It's viewed from North Margin Street. And here from North Margin Street. And the applicant has also provided, showing more illustratively what that foundation would look like if it were to be elevated to that degree. So the guidelines for the historic zoning districts do not comment specifically on elevating buildings, but does comment on foundation height compatibility as related to infill construction. So the foundation height required without issuance of a variance, as I've mentioned, is the 8 foot 6 inches from the current grade level. It is staff's opinion that would be substantially out of context with the finished floors of the other buildings on the block face. It would require a significant change to the building through the creation of a porch and several risers to the front with landings. And these changes would significantly alter the character defining features. This is a storefront building, a storefront commercial building at that, and therefore the alteration would compromise the building's historic status. So it is recommended that the commission provide a favorable recommendation to the Board of Zoning Appeals for the variance request to maintain the building's finished floor elevation as it currently sits. By doing that, it would allow the building to be maintained more sensitively to the architectural qualities it currently has, and it would be the least amount of adverse impact to the structure and the least amount of adverse impact to the overall context of the structure within the district. The applicant would also need to receive the variance, of course, and any sort of alterations to the building that would be required in order to have an occupancy for the building would need to go to the Historic Zoning Commission for consideration. That would be anything from flood vent installation to the elevation and location of any of the mechanical, electrical, HVAC, because that all is required to be elevated above floodplain as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Johnson,
Good evening, friends.
any comments you'd like to make on it in addition?
I agree with everything that Amanda has said. She said it well, and we are current business owners and property owners on that same block, so this building didn't escape our attention daily, and so we're making a intentional move to try to save it. We think it's beautiful. It's definitely in ill repair, but as we attempted to get permits for the repair, that was blocked by the city's requirements to do a full reno. That full reno exceeded the flood spending limits, and they were stuck between a rock and a hard place. So I appreciate the series of events that's led to this discussion so that we could potentially get a variance recommendation by your group to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Okay, thank you. Then, is there a motion from the commission?
I'll make a motion based on the compelling reasons that we've seen and heard about. I move to provide a favorable recommendation to the Board of Zoning Appeals for the variance request.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mary. Discussion? Hearing
Well-
none? Oh, go ahead, Mary.
I'll just say, this is a really rare building stock in Franklin at this point. I'm trying to think of a building we haven't lost like it. I knew a bunch of them that were torn down over time, so I'm excited to see this go forward. I
Okay.
think a National Register nomination might be a great student project on this building.
Thank you. Anything else? All in favor then of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you, committee. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, our next item is consideration of alterations, entrance, roofing, and recommendation request to the Board of Zoning Appeals as related to floodplain construction standards for 724 Fair Street.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This item is similar to the previous one in the request, so I'll be more brief in that explanation, but it also has some components that are seeking a certificate of appropriateness as well. So in this circumstance, the building is seeking a COA for alterations to a previously approved entrance and roofing specification. You can see this is a photograph showing the building 3 feet above base flood elevation. I'll get to that momentarily, but the commission did approve an overall renovation of this building last year during its September meeting. At that time, the applicant did request to add some dividers to the side lights of the entrance, and now they would like to ask for a slight modification to that, namely through adding a slightly different configuration that you can sort of see here. I can zoom in if needed, but some wood panels halfway up and then have divided lights above that, which seems to be fairly common to the vernacular of federal style buildings here in our community. The applicant is also requesting a modification to the roofing. I'm trying to find a better photograph. You can see there was a building addition that was completed roughly 1960s. The applicant did come to the commission, was approved to maintain, let me make sure I get this correctly, was approved during the September meeting to maintain standing seam roofing on all portions of the building except a 1920s edition, which is at the rear of the building, you can't see from this vantage point, which was to remain shingle. So it has been approved for all metal. The applicant would like to change that approved metal specification to a wood shake for the entirety of the building.
Just for the 1920s.
Okay, for the 1920s portion on the rear?
No, it's that. right
Okay.
there,
Okay, so that was a slight misunderstanding there from the way I read the application, but I will get to that. Okay, the next portion of the building alteration, or the application is for the variance request for the recommendation request for the variance that is being presented at some point to the Board of Zoning Appeals. In this case, this is a pre-Civil War era building. The amount of investment that is proposed would trigger substantial improvement. It would require the building to be elevated 3 feet above the base of flood elevation. So the difference between this application and the previous is that when someone inhabits the building residentially, we ask that that be 3 feet above base flood elevation as the regulation. If it's a commercial use only, no inhabitants, it's 1 foot above. So the applicant has provided, similarly to the previous applicant, an illustration to show how much the building would have to be elevated to meet that standard. And they are asking for relief from that as well. Again, the guidelines do not comment on this specifically, but the foundation height required to issue a variance would require, or to avoid issuance of a variance, would also require a significant change to this residence through the creation of a more substantive porch than you see here, through the addition of several risers. And further, I'd ask the applicant to consider providing a structural engineer's report. I found that would be significantly important because it is a lesser level of elevation. In this case, with it being an 1830s construction, the structural engineer has indicated that the building cannot be elevated intact without collapsing due to its method of construction. The first and second level joists are both embedded into the pockets of the brick, so if it were to be elevated intact, it would collapse, which is obviously the antithesis of what we'd like to see. So the applicant is making the request for a favorable recommendation to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and staff would support that request. As for the entrance alteration, we'll go back to the elevation, or the photograph here. Again, the applicant is wanting to use 3 divisions and a lower panel below, which is different than what was approved previously, which was panels divisions all the way down. This is based on some research the applicant has done and is trying to be a little bit more sensitive to what they believe would be the federal style influence on this building. The commission concluded in September that the sidelight or the entrance elements were not entirely original and did approve their alteration. And staff does not have access to a historic photograph that shows the original detailing to this degree, but the proposed alterations do appear to be in keeping with other sidelight configurations in the historic district that are similar in architectural style. As for the roofing, it was my understanding, and the applicant just corrected me, that they are asking to use wood shingle on this portion of the building. And the guidelines state that roof materials contribute to building style and character, and recommend that one retain their historic roof materials and shape. If partial or wholesale replacements needed, that should be done in a composition that matches the historic materials. So since there are no historic photographs that show wood shingle that I have found, I did research the fire insurance maps to gather any relevant information on the historic roofing material. The 1913 Sanborn maps seem to indicate that that Slater 10 was in place on the main portion of the building. And I did that research thinking that applicant wanted to replace on the entirety of the building, so that was my mistake. Though it does appear that the Sanborn maps from the 40s and the 50s, there was a composition roof at some portions, including this one. Now, when they say composition, that could be a number of things. It's shake or shingle. It did not indicate whether or not it was asphalt or another material. The use of asphalt was pretty common from the 19-teens forward, so it's not clear to staff if this was wood shake or not at this portion of the building. It is of a colonial revival style influence, and in our community, at least at this point in time, most of those roofs are of a asphalt shingle composition. So with that, it is recommended that the commission provide two motions. One motion would be to, three motions, excuse me. One, a recommendation request to provide a favorable recommendation for the Board of Zoning Appeals. And for the roofing alteration, that it be denied unless there's more information provided to indicate that that would have been a wood shake roof at the time of construction on that portion of the building. And for the alterations to the entrance, it be recommended that the commission approve with the conditions. Thank you.
Okay, would the applicant please come forward and talk about any and all of it, and then we'll break it down.
Sure. I'll start with the exemption. So, I mean, that's just
Yes.
it's relatively, for us, it's kind of cut and dry from a standpoint of that we can't bring the house back and do everything that we need to. And then we also had, to Amanda's recommendation, had the structural engineer, and he has said, and we provided that, it's in the packet, his recommendation, that it cannot be, the way that it was manufactured, it would crumble. So, and then it would lose all historical significance, and that's not what we're interested in doing either. I mean, we've been here before, and it's like,
Right.
you all know, we plan to make this our home, and we want to bring it back to its original state, so.
Okay.
So that's the
Yeah,
comment.
talk about the roofing. I
Yeah.
want to make sure we all understand that.
Yeah, the roofing is just that side, the 1920s, the asphalt, and we don't have any record or any pictures either. We've been back through all the pictures that we have, and we can't find anything. We just felt like aesthetically in our, like, we would prefer the shake, but understand, the guidelines and the recommendations, so we're okay with what the original recommendation was.
Okay.
And as far as then the door goes, that's just the, my son, like, he did a lot more research. I mean, it's been almost a year. So we found more pictures of, and we just felt that, not knowing that was the original, it's not the original door, but that we felt like that would be closer to what the original door would have looked like based upon pictures and historical data that we found.
You have provided incredible documentation.
He's very thorough.
I gathered that the first time you were in here. Okay, is that all then?
Yes, that's
okay.
it, yep.
Are there any citizens that wish to comment on this application? Hearing none, then, Commission, let's do this in three pieces, and let's deal with the flood elevation request first.
Mr. Chair, I move to provide a favorable recommendation to the BZA for the building finished floor elevation request with all staff conditions.
Okay,
I'll second that.
thank you, Josh. Discussion on that?
I've been contacted by two of the neighbors who ask that we please provide a favorable recommendation, so I think there's neighborhood support.
All right, any other comments? Then all in favor of the motion to approve the recommendation, favorable recommendation to the Board of Zoning Appeals with staff recommendations, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Then let's deal with the roofing next.
I would make, okay, I guess you have to deny, I'll just do I'll make a recommendation to deny the request, since there is no evidence of wood shake shingles. Usually, under a roof, you'll find some evidence if it was there.
Okay, is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Kev.
And just to clarify for
Just
the
go.
record, there was a comment, make a recommendation. I think Ms. Pierce meant a motion. Just to
I'll
make
make a
that-
motion.
Yeah, she
It's a
did make
Yeah,
a motion.
I was thinking that maybe we didn't have to do anything and it could just be withdrawn, but
No,
yeah.
it's motion to deny,
Okay.
to deny.
And, you
To
know,
deny.
I did want to add too that, you know, to Ms. Pierce's point, there have been opportunities in the past where applicants have been replacing roofing material and did find evidence of a different material historically. If you wanted to make a condition that, you know, they work with the applicant, if there is something else found, I'd be happy to do that. So just a note.
I'm
Okay.
fine
Well,
with that.
I think that's part of Mary's motion.
That's part of my motion.
That's
Chair.
what I heard anyway.
I have a question for the applicant on that. Has anyone been in the attic and been able to find any evidence of shake shingles?
No, not that we're aware, so we haven't done a lot. We haven't been able to really do a lot yet.
We have done this on occasion.
Yep.
I can remember one, I think it was on Boyd Mill, that they found evidence and went to Cedar Shakes, I think.
Okay.
So that's a good comment.
And just another question for the applicant.
Yep.
Oh, what was the basis for changing your design from the asphalt to the shingle? I mean, to the,
It was really more aesthetics or personal preference, so, and my son, as the designer, felt that would be more appealing.
yeah. I mean, it will be quite visible. I can
Yeah.
see that. And, I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence because, there really isn't any solid evidence of what was there. And, the wood shingle, if that is the homeowner's preference, I understand that.
The reason that I'm supporting the motion to deny is I don't think you would find it there, so I think.
But the
it's-
door is still open, that if there
If they
is some
do.
evidence, it can come back and
Yeah,
we can deal with it again.
That's
So
very fair.
That's,
Yep.
Okay.
And to
So-
Lisa's point, it's possible.
it's possible.
It's possible, you know, and since Coach Gentry died recently, he says in his memoir, in 1935, he's making slingshot arrows out of wooden roofing material. So we know in 35 it existed.
yeah.
So I'd be interested to see if you find metal
Yeah.
in that area too. But I think it's great to leave it up and just
Yeah.
see what,
I
for
agree.
discovery.
All the photos we have, I mean, there's the big magnolia there now, and then prior to that, there were trees that were taken down in the 1940s, but they were big trees there also. So that is the one section of the house that is always in every picture blocked by a tree. So we weren't able to figure out
See.
what was there. We found historic data for every other area, but that's the one area we haven't been able to find anything.
Okay, any other comments? All in favor of Mary's motion to deny then, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Next item is the entrance alterations. Need a motion for that. And I think everybody saw in the packet the photos of similar front doors with the
Mr.
same
Chair.
kind of treatment, similar treatment.
I move to approve with conditions a certificate of appropriateness for the proposal.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mary. Any discussion?
I've got just a quick comment. I think you'll notice in all the images, the doors that have side lights with panels, the doors actually have panels too. And typically, when you have a long glass door, you have a long glass side lights. They tend to align, in most cases. I've seen varieties of both, but just a comment.
And to that comment, Mr. Chair, I believe that we approved with our original application that wooden panels would be added
Correct.
to the doors.
Okay, that's what I was wondering. Okay.
Good memory.
Yeah, there was a lot of debate about all that.
I remember that, but
I'm new, so.
That's okay.
Yeah,
I will make one other comment, because the documentation is excellent, and so are the photographs. And the photographs of the interior show what appears to be like a mahogany graining pattern on the inside of those doors. So just, you may know that already, just want to point that out. And I find that a lot of late 19th century homes here in Franklin, that same graining pattern is used. So just want to make you aware of that for how you might finish things on the interior.
Okay, thank you.
right.
Mr.
Mary.
Chair, I guess we could add that, which I think they will anyway, but that all the panels align.
Yeah.
The side lights, the door. Is that correct?
Well, I think the panel, I don't remember the actual panel configuration that we approved. It seemed to me like there would be just one single long panel.
Okay.
Correct.
Because the glass is completely gone. in
Yeah,
doors,
the-
right?
Yeah.
So there's
Correct.
it's just one solid door.
Well,
Or
on
two
the,
solid doors,
on the
yeah.
doors he provided, I can't see on one of them, but on the others, it appears they do align.
Are you talking about the very bottom?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah, I see that. And I think that is appropriate. And that's what they're showing in their drawing. Did you want to amend the motion?
Yeah, I'll amend the motion to say that the panels
All right,
align across the bottom
Can I ask a question
of
on
the
that?
wide opening.
So does that mean that the center panel, we would have to divide that into two panels versus what was planned? Because we were planning to replace the glass with wood panels and keep the doors.
Well, my understanding, and I may not understand correctly, my understanding is at the bottom.
Just
So-
line the bottom.
And you're showing that in your
Oh,
drawing.
yes, oh, yeah,
Okay.
yes, it will
Yes.
be aligned, yes.
Okay. So I don't have to,
Yeah.
all right.
Do I
get-
just
get- let's-
withdraw
I'm-
that?
I'm not with you.
I'm not either,
Shh,
yeah.
I hate to be,
I think she's
Ignorant on
she's
this.
referring to the bottom rail of the door, usually has a kick plate, a toe
Oh.
plate, and that the bottom of the
Right,
side
on the
light should
side.
align with
Yes.
that height of the toe plate.
oh,
Does that make
okay.
sense?
Okay,
So the bottom
I got you.
rails would align.
Yeah, that makes sense to me, too.
And it seems to be that's what's planned.
I think that's
Yeah,
what's
it's what's
planned.
drawn.
I'm just
I
gonna
can
withdraw that
guarantee
and
he
think
planned it
that's
that
what
way.
was planned.
Okay, so align with door, give me my wording here. Align with the,
Rails
Mi-
and doors
Miss-
and side lights.
I
Ms.
withdrew
Pierce just
my-
withdrew.
I withdrew.
oh, you withdrew, thank you. Okay, then the original motion stands as presented. Then, any other discussion on that? All in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we're done.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I just want to commend the applicant too. You've done such an excellent job
This
on
is
this
incredible,
house.
what you've given us, really. And I know you'll credit your son, but
I
thank
will
you.
credit my son, so I made the copies.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're very excited about the work moving forward.
It is incredible. Okay. Our next item is consideration of new construction at 324 3rd Avenue South, Brandon Hutchison applicant. Amanda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant is requesting a COA for the construction of a one-story, two-bay accessory structure. The applicant appeared before the DRC in November, February, and April to discuss a very large, complex application that dealt with the entirety of the property, but this portion was deferred at the April meeting, or deferred this portion of the application during its April meeting, and the applicant has brought forward some, a revised version of it today for your consideration. Okay, so the applicant's proposing the construction of an accessory structure at the rear of the property. The guidelines recommend that accessory structures be constructed in traditional locations, such as behind the principal structure, designed to be visually subordinate in scale, size, mass, and intricacy to that principal structure, and that the accessory structures be designed to be shorter in height than and designed to be consistent with the elements and context of that principal structure they serve. The details should be complementary but not visually compete with the character of the principal structure. So in this case, the applicant has proposed, and I'll go back to the site plan. The accessory structure here approved with addition. The accessory structure is proposed to be at the rear of the property, about 6 feet off the property line, which is consistent with the guidelines. It's situated so that the entire structure is behind the principal building. The design of the structure is compatible in detailing and scale to the principal structure, which does meet the guidelines. The scale of the accessory structure is 1 story, which is appropriate. It is a 1-story principal building, and the materials will match that of the principal building. The applicant's proposing to use wood siding and a similar roofing material. The siding used on the accessory structure will need to match the reveal on the principal building. As for the size, it is visually subordinate. The accessory structure is 18 feet at the peak of its ridge, and the principal is 18 inches, or 18 feet 6 inches. It is harder to be significantly shorter when you have a accessory structure or a principal structure that's only 1 story. So they did work to get that just a little bit shorter. The approved square footage of the principal building is right over 3,500 square feet. The footprint of the proposed accessory structure is 1,300 square feet. So it is downsized from what you saw previously, and it is in compliance with the zoning ordinance, which does not permit accessory structure to be more than 50% of the footprint of the principal building. So the DRC at the last meeting had made comments about the massing of the garage portion in relation to the living quarters that are designed to be a part of the building. So the applicant has altered this. I'm going to go to the 2D elevations. So you can see here the garage portion is a little taller than the living quarters, which are designed to feel as if they were in addition to the garage. This is the elevation that would face the back of the house. This is the elevation that would face toward the railroad. This is the elevation that faces toward the right and the rear, which has no fenestration, which is not normally typical, but because this is a rear elevation that backs toward a neighboring property, there was a request by the neighbor that no windows be placed on the portion that faces toward their property. So this is consistent with the guidelines, and that massing has been broken, so you can see that roof line break here. With that, it is recommended that Commission approve the construction with the conditions that the applicant submit an accurate site plan with all current specifications and scope of work as approved. And the reason we say that is there are a couple of notes that were left over from the previous application that aren't exactly correct anymore. So staff has contacted the applicant, and we do want an exact correct version before that goes forward to building permit. The construction of the approved accessory structure would be contingent upon the construction of the addition. The addition was approved by the Historic Zoning Commission, but has yet to receive a building permit. It has to be permitted and constructed in order for the accessory building to meet all the requirements of the zoning ordinance as it relates to the size of the building it serves. The siding must also match the reveal of the principal building. The windows and garage door specifications must be submitted to staff for review and approval prior to issuance of a building permit, and the foundation material must be consistent with that of the principal building and submitted to staff for review and approval as well. Thank you.
All right, would the applicant please come forward? Welcome.
Hello again.
How there?
How are y'all?
Fine, thanks.
Good.
Any comments on the application, additional comments?
She did a great job. We tried to just adjust after our couple meetings last month, so.
Okay.
But I appreciate everything she said.
Okay. Are there any citizens who wish to comment on the application? We've got one speaker card. Chuck Rose?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Chuck Rose. My wife and I reside at 335 4th Avenue South, or the property directly behind the applicant. First and foremost, for all of you, you've done some great work in adjusting this since the first time I saw it and had a panic attack, so thank you for that. In addition to that, one of these items that I was going to speak of looked like they've already been covered, so I ask you to consider 3 items in addition to the applicant's request. I believe this because when I purchased our property at 335, we were given a plat of the property, and the current existing fence in the back of the lot is on the wrong spot. So 5 feet, so if you're saying 6 feet from the back of the fence, I think it needs to be 11. I think our fence is, your property's got 5 feet of ours, if that makes sense. So I ask you, I'm sure you guys would do that before you built anything. So I think it's 5 feet off, is a short story. Second thing, if whatever building goes in the back of the lot, which looks into our backyard, I ask that no windows be facing the home to ensure privacy, protect that privacy. It sounds like that has been achieved. The third thing, and again, I'm not sure this is the proper place for this comment, but I feel the need to state this because I said it last time of what's going on in downtown Franklin. This fits into privacy regarding point number 2. It appears that the intent for either one or both of these structures in this property will be used as a short-term rental or an Airbnb. I want to reiterate that the current city laws state that the owner of the property live on the property, if that is in fact his intent. The existing home has been rented as a long-term rental, the best I can tell at this point. As I mentioned previously, the addition of short-term rentals continues to erode the community of historic downtown Franklin, and one by one we are losing the community its character, which is provided by the residents who live here. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Okay, having said all of that, was there a motion on the accessory building?
And I can just comment, if there is any lingering question, that the applicant has had a property survey completed. The property survey would have been required prior to issuance of a building permit anyway, so the applicant's gone ahead and done that, correct?
Yeah, we're gonna be going off the survey, not the fence.
Right, so it will be figured off the survey. The accessory structure must be at least 5 feet off the property line, wherever that property line falls.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve with conditions the issuance of a COA for the construction of a new accessory structure.
Thank you, Lisa. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Josh. All right, discussion, questions?
What I had hoped that we were going to have was understanding the height of this accessory building to the height of
Main
the
house?
buildings in back of it.
Oh, the neighbor's house.
Do we know that?
I did not do this analysis. I don't have that information intact, but I do know that the buildings behind, we can pull them up and you can see the scale if
Okay.
you'd like to do that, if you
I'd
give
love
me
to
just
do
a
that.
moment. The proposed building construction is 18 feet, which is reasonable for a one-story structure.
We just have generally had at least a foot difference in an accessory structure and a main house. I mean, it seems to me that we
Well, you're talking
generally-
about two different things, I think. You were talking about the
I'm talking about
relationship to
two
the.
different things.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I'm talking that it's pushing the height of what we approve for accessory structures. And because, and I just want to make sure the impact, since it is taller than most for the height of the house in recent years, anyway. I'd like to see what it looks like
All right,
from the
but
back.
are you talking about the neighbor's house or the main house on this property?
Well, I'm saying, I'm making comment, the main house on
Okay.
this property, usually, in recent years, we've been asking for at least a foot
Yeah,
difference.
okay.
This
Even on-
doesn't
right.
have that.
Even on one story, where the principal house is a one-story structure.
So what I have pulled up here is the Fourth Avenue side that is backing up to the property owners, or the subject property. So you can see this is a one-story, two gables connected with a hip. You have a 2.5-story here, a 1-story here, a 2.5-story here. And I believe the one that's directly behind the subject property is here.
2-story, so that's some forgiveness, I think. But then there's a 1-story building in the back of that house.
But where in the guidelines does it say we're supposed to be judging that as to the, I thought it was just the principal structure on the lot.
Yes.
But maybe I'm missing that, where,
I
I think it's a little dangerous to start opening it up to all the
Well,
neighboring
we've looked
properties.
contextually at them because it does impact the neighborhood.
Sure.
An
I just want to make sure I
example of
understand
where
where
we've
we're.
done that is on Lewisburg Avenue, when there was an outbuilding being built, and we regarded what was behind it.
Okay.
It is
For the-
not staff's opinion that the accessory structure proposed this evening will be
Good.
taller than any of the principal buildings on
On.
the street that's behind it.
Got you. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
All right, anything else?
Wanted
And,
to-
no, go ahead. Well, just, this will be quick. I think I heard the answer, but the boundary line issue aside, the drawing, what we've been presented shows it off of your surveyed line, not off the fence, correct?
correct.
I just want to make sure that's clear. Okay.
Amanda, on that drawing that you're on, the elevation with the garage doors facing us, there's a vertical break line between the two roofs. Yeah, that line, and I don't think that's actually there based on the side elevation, because they align. Am I reading that wrong?
No, the side elevation is still there. You see the.
Yeah, but see those ridges? The ridge meets on the left-hand elevation. It aligns with the roof pitch going up. That means they're in the same plane, which means that line wouldn't be there. And then the front door entry there is taller
So
in one
here's
elevation than the other.
Here's the site plan, it might help.
Yeah, see, I don't think the line appears there either. I think that the line between those two roofs, they're in the same plane in elevation. On the side elevation, you can see they touch. They're coplanar. And I don't know that I care if the line's there or not. In real life, it's not gonna be there, because they line up. But the front entry is shown one height on this front elevation and a different height on the side elevation.
So what we can do is we are requesting some alterations to the approved plan set because this plan set altered some things for the accessory structure only, and it kept some numbers from the previous proposal, so they weren't jiving. For example, this set says the accessory structure is proposed at 1,400 square feet, but in actuality it's 1,300 square feet because the plan has been adjusted to meet some of the previous comments, but the overall plan set was not adjusted in that the calculations portion of the document. So we are asking for some changes. We can ask the architect for the applicant to ensure that these elevations are correct and work with staff on that before they would be eligible for a
Okay.
building permit,
Okay.
if that's something comfortable with everyone.
Anything else? then we've got a motion to approve as presented
And,
with staff recommendations. Any other comments?
well, the staff recommendations and comments, I would say. What she just read into the minutes, what she just stated that will be in the minutes.
So
Okay.
I have a question. So this means we're approving something we don't really know what it is, and we're just handing it off to staff to make it right?
Yep.
If we do this, that's
Yeah.
what it appears. The break in the roof would matter to me because I feel like it's pretty large for a backyard building and it would minimize it.
As a commissioner, I would like to see what we're approving and the drawings and, to know exactly what we're doing rather than having something that's ethereal and theoretical.
Well, you may want a motion to defer then.
Mr. Chair, I move to defer
Because
this
it
application
trumps the motion that's on the floor.
to the next voting meeting of the Historic Zoning Commission.
I would second that.
And at that time, you want to see exact drawing of what the applicant is proposing.
That's right.
All right.
Does the applicant have any questions at this point about what the commissioner has said? And why we are making that motion? Why he made that motion?
I mean, I'm assuming that you feel like there's still some things up for chance or for interpretation, and that's the reason?
For clarification, I
Yeah,
think
so
is
the
word.
drawings don't match in elevation. We'd like to see drawings that are actually descriptive of what's going to be built.
In other words, what I'm hearing is there's a disconnect between what's being proposed and what's being shown on the drawings, and if that's wrong, I'd say explain it, but if not, the commissioner's wanting to see exactly, a depiction of exactly what's being proposed, as opposed to something that doesn't line up.
Is this regarding the front elevation that Tyler was speaking of, or is this regarding the pitch right there on the side elevation? I guess that's what I'm trying to
So
understand.
they're the same thing.
They're related.
Yeah, and I think to
So-
show it correctly.
So I think your intent is this one, but you can look at the lines here. The way this is drawn, this appears that this would be centered and it would all be on the same plane, but it's not. Over here, you've got this butting forward. But you see here, the garage is supposed to be forward of the living space, correct?
I thought the living space was supposed to be, based on recommendations from the last meeting, the living space was supposed to be forward from the garage.
If you look at the site plan here, they're lined up.
Okay,
So I think that's the confusion.
gotcha. Okay.
And see that in elevation, that little notch that's between the living space and the garage, the right there, that doesn't exist in the side elevation. The roof is 2 feet forward or whatever that reveal is.
But would it, because the front line of I don't know, that front line of the dormer is showing to be pretty flush with the garage, the front of the garage, and it's notched in. So if you're looking from the side, would that really show, or is it?
Yeah, it's that there's a deeper overhang over the notch, which means it aligns.
Okay.
Yeah, I think your architect can figure it out.
Okay, anything else? We've got a motion to defer.
Amanda, can you tell us what date the next historic zoning meeting is for, please?
Certainly, the deferral needs to get a date certain, and the next voting meeting would be on June the 13th.
June the 13th. Thank you.
And Ms. Rose, the applicant is welcome to return to design review if they so choose.
Yes, I would need to know that today, though.
Okay, all in favor of the motion to defer, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll get there. Okey-dokey. Our next one is consideration of alterations, roof line, dormer construction at 905 Evans Street.
Yes, the applicant is requesting a certificate of appropriateness for alterations, including altering the roof line, raising the roof line, and changing the roof form of the attached accessory that you see here in the darker color, adding a dormer to the front, and then placing awnings over the garage door openings. This applicant did appear before the DRC to discuss the proposal at its April meeting. So this two-bay front-loaded garage is located at the rear of the property, at the end of the existing driveway. The garage is designed to appear detached from the main portion of the building. So just to be clear, this garage already exists. What the applicant is proposing to do is alter the garage, and I'm trying to find the existing conditions. I believe staff added them to the rear. Yep. I'd have to pull that up, forgive me. The proposal is right now, is a gable form that has some attic space, but it's not finished out. So the applicant is proposing to alter the roof line so that they could get some additional space above. Although attached, it reads as an accessory structure from the street view, and the guidelines recommend that accessory structures be subordinate in placement, massing, and scale to the principal structures they serve. The applicant is not proposing to expand the footprint at all, but to keep that massing subordinate to the main portion of the house. The applicant is proposing to add that 5 feet 11 inches in height to make it 26 feet 5 inches. That height is proposed to match the height of the side-facing dormers on the principal structure, which is 4 feet 3.5 inches shorter than the main house. The garage is proposed to be changed in roof form. Like I said, the current is a front gabled form, and the applicant is proposing to change that to a side gabled with the 2 dormers, one on the front, one on the back. So you see the front one here. The rear you can see located here. The proposal is not entirely in keeping with the recommendations of the guidelines to change historic roof forms, but because this is a recent infill construction as of the 2010s, the building is not historic, and the guidelines would not necessarily apply. The guidelines recommend that dormers on accessory structures be set back at least 2 feet from the exterior wall, which has been done here, and that the details of the building remain compatible but differentiated from the main portion it serves, which we believe is the case as well. The applicant has indicated that the front and rear dormers will actually be set a foot off the exterior walls, and so it's not entirely in keeping with the recommendation of the guidelines for dormers on historic structures, but it is a foot off on each side, which is consistent with recommendations for infill, as I recall them. The applicant is proposing to add 2 standing seam metal awnings to the front, as you can see here. That is based on the DRC comments, where it was previously proposed to be 1 continuous awning, and the DRC recommended to be more in keeping with the recommendations of the guidelines to divide those into 2. The standing seam is proposed as something that's different from what's on the remainder of the building, but also standing seam is a rather common awning material. So it is recommended the commission approve the proposed alterations with the conditions that the siding on the altered garage must match the existing material and reveal. The awnings must consist of a standing seam, and it indicates metal. We just want to be clarifying that it's standing seam metal, that the window profiles and dimensions meet the guidelines and be submitted to staff for consideration prior to issuance of a building permit, and that it meet all the requirements of the BNS department prior to issuance of a building permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the applicant please? Welcome. Any comments?
Well, I did want to say that I don't recall called who suggested the change, that the original dormer seemed a bit heavy. And then when the architect redrew to the single standing metal seam, I like it so much better. So I very much appreciate that.
Good, I'll always take credit.
Okay, I'm sure it was you, I'm sure.
Any other comments, though, about the application?
No, sir.
Okay. Are there any citizens who wish to comment on the application? All right, Commissioners, we need a motion then.
All right, I'll move to approve with conditions the issuance of the certificate of appropriateness for alterations to the roof line, dormer construction, and awning placement.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tyler. All right, discussion. Any comments? Other than this fits right along with the others on the street.
Yes, sir, it does. Thank you so much.
Any comments? All right. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You're done.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, we're ready for number 6, consideration of alterations, utilities placement at 231 Public Square.
The applicant is requesting a COA for the placement of a cell antenna at 231 Public Square. The antenna is part of a larger system, part of which is located on the interior of the building, and the exterior cell antenna is intended to help boost the internet connectivity for the interior of the building, specifically the basement area. So you can see on the screen here the proposed location. This is the facade that faces toward City Hall. This building is directly adjacent to City Hall, where we are located, and the facade is actually beyond this wall here. So this faces inward, and the location is on a corner where where Main Street intersects with Public Square. The guidelines recommend that utilities be placed on rear elevations or otherwise out of view. The applicant noted that the equipment is proposed on the elevation that faces City Hall because it is the least visible of the public view sheds, because it does sit on a corner lot, and the rear elevation actually is pretty visible because there is no building behind it. It is a surface lot located there. So being at a corner lot, this building does lend itself to visibility at multiple vantage points. And while not on a facade that faces the street, the proposed location for the cell antenna is still on a visible elevation, as it can be seen from 2nd Avenue South. Additionally, the guidelines recommend that the utilities be screened from public view. The proposed location of the cell antenna, as you can see, is 18 feet above grade, 30 feet from the corner of the building. The DRC recommended the applicant consider alternative coloring for the antenna to help mitigate its appearance so that it would help effectively screen it, since it is visible from street view. The applicant has not indicated any intent to use a color that would help screen the antenna, so the specifications we received indicate it would be white, so it would be fairly visible from the street. So with that, it is recommended that the Historic Zoning Commission deny the placement of the cell antenna because the location is visible, the equipment is not screened, and does not employ the DRC's recommendation for use of a darker color. If it is issued a COA, any mounting bolts for the cell antenna should be placed through the mortar joints as opposed to the face of this masonry. And if issued a COA, the application must meet all the requirements of the Building and Neighborhood Services Department prior to issuance of any applicable permits. And any changes to the plan set must be submitted to staff or the commission for review and approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the applicant please come forward? Hi there.
I did find out that the antenna can be painted. As long as it's non-metallic, they said it could be painted.
Okay, that's good. All right, are there any citizens who wish to comment on the application? You might just reiterate the size of this
It
unit.
was about 9 inches tall and about,
2.5?
about that big around.
Ah.
A little bit smaller than this piece of paper.
Okay. All right. Are there any citizens which comment on the application? Otherwise, we need a motion.
I have a question for the applicant.
Well, let's have a motion first.
I'll make a motion to approve the issuance of a COA for the placement of a cell antenna at 231 Public Square based on staff analysis and recommendations dated May 9th, 2022, and based on the fact that we just heard that the antenna can be, or the unit can be black.
It can be whatever color we want it to be.
And also based on the fact that our guidelines certainly do address utilities, but that this is a unique situation.
All right, thank you. Is there a second? Tal?
Yes, that's me, thank you.
Okay, discussion?
I would love to see it be a gunmetal bronze color to match the windows and doors on the building,
Windows and doors or light fixtures that are already on the building?
or light fixtures, just
Something
pick a
blends with
color.
that.
Yes. Pick a color that exists on the building.
Staff
That's
would,
dark.
staff would be more comfortable if that was an amendment to the motion with the specified color so that it's very clear.
All right, Mary's made a motion that the color of
An amendment.
an amendment, yeah, amendment motion, that the color blend with the other trim colors or fixture colors on the building. How about that?
And there may be black, but if black or dark bronze, yes, that's my amendment. A color that exists on the building, a dark color that exists.
I'll second, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Is there any other comment on the motion?
I would question too, the bracketing match the color of the actual,
That's
Yeah,
what
that-
I
it
meant
all
to
could be
say.
painted.
I meant to say that.
Yeah, it could all be painted.
and it talks, in the spec, it talks about multi-mount bracket for mass or wall, so this would be a wall mount.
Yes.
And then according with the staff's recommendations for mounting it within the mortar joints of the brick.
All right, I've got unit and bracket color blend with the other colors on the trim and fixtures of the building.
Yes.
Could they submit a sample to staff?
Okay, any other conversation? Comments?
Kathy just,
Could they submit a sample to staff for approval? A color?
Okay.
Yep.
With color sample to staff for approval. Anything else? All right, then, all in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Mr. Chair, I'm going to abstain.
Okay. All right, so we got 6 then and 1 abstention on the amendment. All right, then we're back to the main motion as amended. Any other comments on that?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have some questions. So just one, and I forget whether the lighting is uplighting or downlighting.
It's
on this
uplighting.
building. And if it's placed, kind of in the location you have, directly above a light, is that going to interfere
It's
with the shadow
actually,
line?
the picture's kind of deceptive. It's to the left of that light.
So it won't cast a shadow?
No. Yeah, because that's just uplight LEDs.
Pink uplight. Any other questions? And Josh is abstaining on this.
Correct.
So the motion, main motion as amended then. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And so, again, 6 and 1 abstention.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, number 7, consideration of alterations walkway construction at 209 Second Avenue South, Gary Mathena applicant.
The applicant is requesting a COA for the alterations of the driveway and walkway. The applicant, as representative, did appear before the DRC at the April meeting. So the applicant is proposing to resurface an existing driveway, which is a loose pea gravel. Give me just a moment. I think my memory is, the computer memory is not keeping up, so give me just a second. Okay, I just closed it and opened it back up, so I've had a lot of applications open, it's just kind of losing memory a little bit. So the application is to make the loose pea gravel here hardscaped with the same material, and to alter the driveway configuration slightly so that a sidewalk will run from the top of the driveway back to the existing patio to allow the applicant to move items from the rear of the property to the front, such as the trash receptacle. The applicant is wanting that to be a 3-foot wide walkway, simply to be able to do so. The walkway would be about 30 feet in length to connect the patio to the driveway. It would be 2 feet from the edge of the sunroom so that it is not sitting on the edge of that enclosed porte-cochere. And the guidelines would recommend that new sidewalks and walkways follow historic alignment in pattern, width, and material. The applicant has proposed to use permeable pavers in order to do that, similar to those used at the rear patio. So simply, this is a function of moving things from the back to the front of the property. The DRC had responded in April and asked that the applicant consider changing the material of the walkway to pervious pavers to differentiate it from the driveway, which the applicant has done. And the applicant had previously asked to have the driveway run parallel and connect to the public sidewalk, but has since decided just to connect the sidewalk from the patio to the top of the driveway just to have that connection. And once this is hardscape, that would give him the ability to pull the receptacle forward. So you can see on the plan here, patio, proposed walkway connects to the left of the parking pad that is being created with the hardening of the existing material. Those border stones are proposed to stay in place. So this is a simpler version of what you saw at DRC, which is very much in keeping with the guidelines and with the spirit of the DRC comments. And so it is enthusiastically recommended that the commission approve the driveway and walkway alterations, that the conditions that the application must meet all the requirements of the BNS department prior to issuance of any applicable permits. And Mr. Tosh is here. The previous version would have required some additional permits, but I'll ask him to comment if he sees that this would require any permits from his department or not. I think for the simplification of it, it probably would not require anything, correct?
It would not from the building portion. Zoning may want to look at it for pervious to impervious calculations, and I would assume they did on the review before it got here.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point. For landscape surface area, it may require a building permit, but this does meet the requirements otherwise. Thank you.
Okay, would the applicant please come forward? Good afternoon.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Would you like to comment on the application? I'm sure, are you Mr. Mathena?
I am.
Good. Well,
And
welcome.
I apologize that I was not able to be here for the DRC meeting, and appreciate my friend standing in for me. I was out of state that day, but I was able to watch the proceedings on the stream. And so I appreciate so much several of your comments, and I tried to incorporate that in my representation for you today. And Amanda did a great job describing it. Victoria's been wonderful to work with. I look forward to meeting her and congratulating her on her new degree.
That's right.
And so that's just wonderful. I'm an adjunct professor at Liberty University, and so
saw
I
that in the
appreciate
information, yeah.
I appreciate all the effort that goes into that work. So I think Amanda has described things very, very well. I'm willing to answer any questions or any clarification
Thank you.
that you might desire from
Thank
me.
you. Are there any citizens present that'd like to comment on the application? Hearing none, we need a motion then from the commission.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve with conditions the issuance of certificate of appropriateness for the driveway and walkway alterations with staff conditions.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second. Oh, no, go ahead.
I would second that.
Thank you, Kathy. Discussion. Kathy?
I have one comment, maybe I missed it. The proposed walkway.
Yes.
What is the material proposed for that?
The patio is a travertine tiles, of different sizes. The travertine is set on what it appears to me to be like a crushed stone with space in between the travertine so water can get down through there. And so I think Mary mentioned that she'd like to see material from the property used on that. And so.
I don't think I said that.
Okay, all
I
right.
wanted a different material.
A different material, okay.
Yes, sir.
My misunderstanding.
That's okay.
So my thought was that I would just use that same material that was on the patio, that travertine tiles, and bring that down to the top of the driveway. And just for clarification too, what I would like to do, what I'm planning on doing is reusing those border stones, but I'm going to set them, I'd like to set them flush with the surface of the driveway, the new hard surface of the driveway. And that way, when I pull my trash cans down, I won't have to jump over those, but it'll all be the same height.
Okay, thank you. Is there any other questions? All in favor then of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
God
you,
bless
Mr.
you,
Green.
each one. Thank you.
Okay, we're now ready for the next item, which is consideration of demolition accessory at 115 Winslow Road. Amanda.
I am still having the stream issue, so I'm going to open that one back up. Okay, the applicant is requesting a COA for the demolition of the accessory structure on the property. Ms. Hensley prepared this, so I will give her comments. Her comments were that the stone accessory structure was originally built as the garage for the neighboring property, and the lot reconsolidation in 2018 meant that the accessory structure was separated from its original principal building at 111 Winslow Road, and later became part of what is now 115 Winslow Road, a decision that the Historic Zoning Commission at the time approved. The accessory structure is situated such that the garage opening faces 111 Winslow Road and is located close to the property line. So I'm going to go through, forgive me, Miss McNeely sent me some photographs today that I wasn't able to upload at the time, but this is the view of the wall from the street view. And then you see a wing wall here. On the left elevation, you see that it faces toward the neighboring property. In fact, you can see part of the newly constructed accessory structure on that property in the background. So the opening for the garage is very much close to the property line of the original property on which this building was situated. The guidelines recommend against the demolition of buildings or structures that are historic. However, the guidelines do state that the commission can approve demolition if the commission deems one or more of the demolition criteria met. The applicant has appeared before the DRC several times to discuss this proposal, and at one of the more recent DRC meetings, the applicant was encouraged to get a structural engineer's report, which she provided at the DRC meeting in April. That engineer's report was to comment on structural instability or deterioration. The guidelines state that that may be a criteria by which the commission considers demolition, specifically if the structural instability or deterioration of a property is demonstrated through a report by a structural engineer or architect, and the report must clearly detail the property's physical conditions, the reasons why rehabilitation is not feasible, and cost estimates for rehabilitation versus demolition. The structural engineer, Michael Garman, provided a report, and the report provided by the applicant from the structural engineer describes the accessory structure's condition as a limestone cobble foundation with a poured slab on top of the limestone foundation. The stone veneer was then installed, and according to the engineer, the foundation appears to be directly on the subgrade without any reinforced concrete footing, and two walls of the accessory structure do not have that stone veneer. So you see the front facade here has the stone veneer. The left facade does not, because that is the opening for the original garage. The right side does have the veneer, the rear does not because there is a lean-to frame addition on the rear of that building. So 2 of the walls do have the original stone. The engineer also notes that the addition at the rear is poorly constructed. The one wall with a significant amount of stone, the front wall that you see in the photograph here, is cracking as a result of structurally significant settlement. In order to use the accessory structure as a garage, the applicant would need to significantly alter at least one wall, because one wall would need to be removed in order to allow the applicant to enter the building. That would need to be the rear or the right walls. The engineer's report details how settlement has caused the slab of the accessory structure to crack and the walls to pull away from the foundation, and the accessory structure would need to have a new poured concrete footing. The report also details how the rafters are not connected to the bearing walls to resist the uplift. The report concludes by stating that the building is not structurally sound. It is not situated in a usable position on the lot. And because the building is not structurally sound, the applicant is not able to alter the building in order to continue using it as a garage on the newly created lot at 115. So with that, it is recommended the commission approve the demolition of the accessory structure with the following conditions: that the applicant provide satisfactorily photographed images inside and out of the building prior to its removal, which the applicant has done today, and that the approval is limited to demolition only. Any further action on the site involving construction is not approved at this time and will require issuance of a COA from the commission and a building permit, and that the application must meet all the requirements of the Building and Neighborhood Services Department prior to issuance of a permit, and any changes come forward to staff or the commission for review and approval. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the applicant please come forward? Welcome, Ms. McNeely.
Thank you for having me again.
Any other comments that we haven't already discussed?
I have none other than to thank staff and to thank y'all for, I know you have been given a task to preserve Franklin, so I appreciate the consideration.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any citizens which comment on this application? Otherwise, we need a motion.
I'll do it. I move to approve with conditions the issuance of a certificate of appropriateness for the demolition of the accessory structure at Winslow Court.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Brian. Discussion?
Yeah, I have some comments. I know everybody's shocked. This is a tough one, and I am sympathetic to the situation. I just will say, I think we're in this quandary in large part because this lot was permitted to be divided with the accessory structure being a part of a separate lot, and I wasn't here when that was done. And so I guess what I go to is, I read the engineer's report, I've read it multiple times, and part of it is this comment that the building's not structurally sound, but to me, it's unclear whether that is based on the anticipated use of this accessory structure as a garage with the other stone wall having to come out. That's unclear to me, and I don't think the engineer's here today. And then also the comment that it's not situated in a usable position on the lot, which quite frankly, I don't think is the engineer's purview to be. So it's unclear to me, given that, the extent of the recommendation, whether it's because it's unusable, because it's not structurally sound. And I go back to what staff read earlier, which is this is an extreme thing for us to permit demolition. And so the guidelines state, according to what staff's read and my understanding of the guidelines, that if you're going to do it on instability or deterioration, that you must, quote, such a report must, quote, clearly detail the property's physical condition, reasons why rehabilitation is not feasible, and cost estimates for rehabilitation versus demolition. And I don't think that the engineer's report meets the criteria. It's not an or, which would make it any one of those three things could be shown to us in that report. It's an and, which from just a statutory construction standpoint is mandatory. That report, if we're gonna make a decision based on that report, it must state, it must clearly detail the property's physical condition, the reasons why rehabilitation is not feasible. I don't think I really saw that in there either. I saw a lot of discussion about how it would be problematic to repurpose this for a garage with a different entrance, but I didn't see the commentary where it was why rehabilitation was not feasible. And then I certainly did not see any cost estimates for rehab versus demolition. So I don't think, I understand all of us being sympathetic. I'm very sympathetic to that site, that neighborhood. I think that building has a lot of value when you drive by it and see with the character of the neighborhood. And I just don't think that if we're going to start granting demolition permits, we ought to be doing it in compliance with the requirements of what we're charged with. And the report that's been presented, to my view, does not begin to satisfy the requirements of the guidelines. And so, for that reason, I just can't support it, the motion.
Mr. Chair, to what Josh said, which is the thing I've wondered all along, is how did those lots, was it the existing lot lines, or you would think, I think they were 30-foot lots in the beginning, but you would think once a home was built on it, that would have been the lot. I wonder how those were changed without us ever ask for an opinion. I don't understand that. I am supporting the motion that I made more based on the situation we're in with how the lots were divided, but I'd love to know how that happened.
I'm happy to give an
Go ahead,
overview
Amanda.
from my recollection. The applicant at the time was different. It was Gamble Design Collaborative. They did come forward to the commission to ask to alter this building so that the garage door would be on the other side. So instead of being here, it would be enclosed and then opened here because of the proposed lot line change. And the commission did approve that. The work did not take place, however, because frankly, the land sat for a while before they were put for sale.
How did the lot lines get changed?
It was through the certificate of appropriateness that was issued by the commission at the time that approved the alteration of this building. It gave the city the inclination to support the proposed lot line shift because the commission did approve the alteration to the building that would allow the building to be separated from the principal building and used as a garage for the vacant lot.
So
that was in 2018, so it's been a few years ago.
So we actually weighed in on
Yes.
the new lot configuration.
Yes.
But it was premised by this building would stay.
It was premised that this building would be on this lot.
Right.
Yes,
but
ma'am.
But
they
I
said
don't
they
remember
would
it being that it would stay
Well,
necessarily.
it sounds like they wouldn't have made the argument to change the door if it didn't premise it on the building staying.
I don't know, because at the time, nobody knew who was going to buy the lot.
No one had requested to demolish the building at the time, no, but there was an approval to alter the opening, so change the right elevation so it would serve as an opening for the garage to enter and that the left would have to be closed up. It was a conceptual approval. The commission didn't feel it had enough information at the time to do a full approval on that, but it was approved against staff's recommendation. It was approved conceptually to move forward so that the applicant can subdivide the lot.
And I guess my point is, and again, I'm sympathetic to the position, and I know it was bought with obviously with that having been approved for the lot to be divided and that the historic structure to stay with it. I just am very concerned about the precedent it sets when we grant a demolition application without without the applicant meeting the requirements of, the express requirements of the ordinance. And that report does not begin to meet the requirements that the guidelines set forth, from my view.
All right, anybody else? Any other comments? We've got a motion.
I would disagree. I agree that the engineering report really didn't, it was not within their purview to comment on, well, this building is in the way of what the homeowners want to build. So that's not part of their job, but the rest of the assessment, I feel, does justify the fact that this building is, that it's cracked and that there's pulling away, there's termite damage. It's what we rely on when it comes to demolition. And I understand that my fellow commissioner is saying, well, what's lacking in this report is there's no reference to rehabilitation of the building or the cost that it would require. It's been clear to me from what you've said in the past that rehabilitation would be counterproductive to your needs when you purchase the property, that the rehabilitation of this building is not what you're willing to invest in because there's no point in rehabilitating it. Am I correct?
There is a line in my mind of representing false history. And to tear the building down, to almost replicate it, to me, is not our goal here. It's not our wish. We have understood from the structural engineer, like we have been letting other people in the neighborhood like put things in there. If it was warm, they could go have lunch in there, that kind of thing for construction. We can't do that anymore. We cannot accept the liability of people going in that structure anymore because of what the structural engineer has reported to us. The walls are coming away from the side of the foundation. They're bowing, and so they're cracking from the outside. The foundation, again, I don't want to talk about people that are not here, but okay, in concept, you can come in the other side, our side. But yet it's like 3 feet off the ground, the foundation in the garage. So when it just was not something that we felt, we being staff, our architect, the builder, my husband and I, felt that it was something that we were trying to represent kind of a false representation of history. It was either going to work because it was sound, or it needed to be incorporated or removed in some fashion.
And the idea of incorporating it is not something, based on what you've presented about your future intentions for that property, incorporating it is not feasible. Am I correct in that assessment?
We have, I guess what I would call inspiration design that we would like to emulate, and nowhere did those walls, those two exterior walls, fit into the building? And so, would we tear them down and then rebuild them inside? I mean, is that what, is that what we're being asked to do?
I think these are just questions
Yeah.
and comments. Go ahead, Lisa.
Yeah,
But-
and the only point I was trying to make is that in terms of the concept of rehabilitation, with respect to a property owner and the rights that a property owner has, it seems unlikely for a property owner to have the financial motivation to rehabilitate a building that, as we can see from this report, is already under a lot of damage and a lot of difficulty in terms of its stability. So I think the rational assessment would be that most property owners would just let the building sit there, which to me just means that this building is going to degrade more and more if it's left as is. As you know, the idea of demolition is difficult for us, and especially in this circumstance.
Yes, ma'am, I do. It's very difficult for us.
Yeah, and I agree with the motion because of the extenuating circumstances and out of respect for the owner's property rights and the fact that this engineering report, in my mind, satisfies the intent of the guidelines.
It is our intent to repurpose, to clean every stone and stack it and reuse it on the property.
Any other questions or comments?
Well, I'll just go back. It appears to me, when we considered it, and the lots were divided as they were, in retrospect, was creating us to be here.
Yeah.
Well, but it is what it is.
That's right.
It is what it is now. And we've got a situation where we've got a structure on a lot that's really in horrible shape, and I've been in that structure, and it is in horrible shape. And the engineer's report documents that. It does not have a monetary value on what it could be done to refurbish it or put it back in shape. But aside from that, it is in terrible shape, plus the fact it's really impeding on the development of what the McNeelys want to do with that property overall.
Well,
And that's, I mean, that's where I am.
Mr. Chair, I don't really think it impeding on their plans is our consideration.
Well,
I think that looking at the streetscape and how it's going to play out at this point in time is my driving force.
Right, but my driving force along that line is the fact that it's gonna, that I'm more concerned with the slope of that land and how it's gonna all fit in there than I am this accessory building, which, in my judgment, needs to come down, and I will support the motion to that effect. And I've felt that way since day one. So, and to say that yes, we don't like to demolish buildings, but we have done that over the course of several years, both commercially, because I can think of a good development right down the street where a number of buildings were demolished and they needed to be, as well as a couple of residential situations where they have been. But we don't do it lightly, but I think this is a case where we need to go on and approve this motion to, on this accessory structure, so.
But I'll just say one more thing, Mr. Chair, to Josh's comments, I think if you were looking at this to tear down your usual outbuilding, we would have wanted some numbers and more than this. We have been very, very careful, cautious, stewardship to the forefront on historic buildings.
And I'll just kind of close my comment with this. I think that's the very dangerous precedent we set today in approving this without requiring that. Because I understand the chair's comments about this building not fitting the McNeely's proposed development of the lot because of how this lot was allowed to be divided. That's history, that happened, it is what it is. They bought it subject to that division and subject to that historic building being on there. And so I think it is obviously I'm the cog in the wheel here, and I'm not unsympathetic to your position, but I don't think it's appropriate, when you're saying we're going to require a different standard and have for other buildings in different situations. In my view, that's not our job. Our job is to look at the guidelines and to follow them. And here we've had staff, and it's in the report, read what's required of an engineer's report, not conjecture, a certified engineer's report, and it just doesn't have it in it. And I think it sets a dangerous precedent for the next person who wants to demolish a building under the historic overlay to come in and say, well, you didn't make that applicant do it, so why should we be treated differently? So that's a concern for me.
And you're right, that's a great point. However, we have done that on other I can think of one on Franklin Road, a big one out there that we went through several years of. It was a standalone single-family dwelling, and it was in horrible shape, and we required what you're asking for. And it went through, I think, a couple of owners before we finally came, and we tore it down, they built the same house on the property. But we went through that cost justification. I think this is a little different in it that it's an accessory building. And in my mind, it's a different situation.
I just don't see a different standard set
Well,
forth for an
we
accessory
just
versus a primary
agree to
building in the
disagree.
code. Yeah, that's fine.
So, any other comments on this?
I just wanted to say that, Mr. Chair, that, to the three elements that are required, I see a lot of them in one of the structural engineer's report. He says, without a poured concrete footing, there's no practical method to stabilize the foundation. And goes on talking about there's no practical way to do this. So I took that as reading between the lines, like, he's saying, yeah, you could fix
do it,
this,
yeah.
but you're gonna start from the bottom and go up, and that's kind of like, well, if you're building a new one, let's just build a new one.
So,
And may I comment too? I want to make sure that staff's comments don't go misunderstood. And I apologize that I did not write this myself to be very clear. Mr. LaMarinelle hit right on the staff's interpretation of this, is that Mr. Denton's absolutely correct in what the guidelines say to provide, but it was my reading of this and, my colleagues' understanding of our review of it, that this could not feasibly be rehabilitated. And I probably should have been more clear in my analysis, or my colleagues should have been more clear in us talking about it and her putting that analysis together, that it is my understanding from this report that due to the significant grading change from, you can see on the screen, from left to right, and the engineering's comments, that this could not be rehabilitated. And I do wish that I was more clear in the analysis for that.
So, yeah, I'm inclined to vote for the motion to approve based on that. While I do believe Mr. Denton's comments are true, the report's a little light on data.
So, Mr. Chair, can I ask our architect, because it's stone, you'd have to take all the stone
That's what the
off to fix
engineer
it?
said.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, and I can't
Okay.
make professional judgment on this board, would be inappropriate of me, but based on what he says, to make this work, you'd have to remove the stone, install a footing, reconstruct a foundation wall, and then put the stone back on top of everything. And it's like, well, if we're gonna just rebuild it, they are tearing it down. The rehab plan, which I can imagine is very expensive, is to tear it down, according to the engineer, so.
Okay, is there any other comments? Then we'll do a hand vote on this one. All in favor of the motion to demolish the accessory structure, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All opposed? 5 to 2 in favor of tearing it down. Okay, number 9, consideration of alteration storefront masonry at 412 Main Street, Chisel Workshop. I see one McCrary here.
Okay, I will need to reopen this one as well.
Mr.
Memory
Chair,
doesn't wanna
Before
let.
we begin, number 9, may I request a recess?
Certainly, there's a motion by Mr. Lesser for a 10-minute recess.
7 o'clock.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
All in favor, please stand.
Okay, we'll resume at 6:58. Thank you.
7 o'clock. You're a hero. All right, we're back to order. Item number 9, consideration of alteration storefront masonry at 412 Main Street, Chisel Workshop applicant. Ms. Rose.
I am trying to get the projector to connect. I'm having trouble with it tonight, and I apologize. I don't know what I'm doing wrong, if I am doing anything wrong. Okay.
There you go.
Let me know if it goes out, because I'm not always looking at it. Kelly's been doing a really good job helping me remember, so. The applicant is requesting a COA for the alterations to the storefront and facade at 412 Main Street, which you see on the screen. The applicant appeared before the DRC to discuss the proposal at the March and April meetings. The subject property is a 2-story brick commercial building. It was erected sometime around 1890. The building has 2 storefronts, and the storefront proposed for renovation is the one on the left. So you see on the screen the one on the left. I can scroll through and you can see the one on the right, which is Walton's Jewelers here. The storefront on the left has been altered extensively throughout history, as evidenced by the applicant's photographic documentations of 1890s, pre-1890s, 1940s, and 1980s, as well as the current conditions. They've done an excellent job on research for this particular proposal. The proposal seeks to alter the current storefront appearance to adopt elements from previous storefront renditions, namely the employing of a modified version of the 1890s livery stable conditions, which was an arched opening that was spanned into the second floor area. The proposal also includes some brick and cornice detailing evident during the 1890s and 1940s building configurations. The proposal also includes painting the upper level brick facade. The guidelines recommend restoring modeled storefronts to their original design or designs based on traditional storefront arrangements. Further, the guidelines suggest consultation with historic photographs when new storefronts are under design. When reestablishing or reconstructing storefronts, the guidelines support the use of copper, bronze, or painted aluminum storefront display mullions or muntins, clear and untinted insulated glass, and new bulkheads of wood, brick, stone, or metal that match historic brick or are painted to complement other storefront elements. The applicant has conducted significant research on the building while developing the proposal, which is certainly to be commended. I have rarely received this much research on a proposal, so it was a wealth of information. I learned a lot, and I very much enjoyed reading the application. The proposal is not truly prescriptive of any of the 4 appropriate treatments of the Secretary of Interior standards for the treatment of historic properties, however, which serve as the basis for the guidelines. So in addition to what I just mentioned, the guidelines state there are the 4 prescriptive treatments, and I outlined those here. Preservation is the act of applying measures necessary to sustain an existing form. So basically, preserve in place. This is typically refers to measures to protect and stabilize, maintain a building. So this is not the applicable treatment here, since little of the historic fabric remains on the exterior front facade. Rehabilitation is probably 99.9% of what the Historic Zoning Commission reviews. It is the active process of making possible compatible use for a property through repair, alterations, additions, while preserving those portions or features that convey its historical, cultural, or architectural values. Rehabilitation is the most common treatment. In theory, it can be supported. Like I said, that's what the commission reviews most all the time. While the proposed storefront design features some elements of a traditional store front configuration, such as a central and slightly recessed entrance and large transoms, I'll go here to the proposal. This design does not model a traditional storefront arrangement as outlined by the guidelines or accurately convey the previous architectural elements of the building. The proposal employs an arch shape and size that's not typical to the downtown historic district, as the existing arches consist of elements here, like the large arch that gets up into the second floor that used to be a livery, which the subject building was too. Smaller historic arch features like you see on the, for pedestrian doors for the part of the white building here. And also upper facade window shapes that you see throughout, like here and here. These are historic elements. They're not replications or alterations or modifications of historic elements. The guidelines demonstrate storefronts with regularly spaced rectangular openings as traditional storefront features. Since many of the storefronts in downtown Franklin have been altered, the types of storefronts recommended by the guidelines are of a typical historic design that do not overshadow the remaining historic storefronts in proportion or detailing. Now, restoration is a type of treatment that can be supported. That is the act or process of accurately depicting the form, features, and character of a building as it appeared at a particular period of time. So what the applicant has done is extensive amount of research to show how the building looked at a particular period in time. However, they have chosen to, the application shows elements from different portions of the building throughout time. For example, a modified version of a livery stable form, which would have been truly more like this. Portions of the building at different points in time, with 1940s, where it had this brick detailing and cornice detailing. So it's not truly a restoration project because it does incorporate different or inexact proportions and detailings and dimensions of elements from different parts of history. Reconstruction would be the act of depicting through the means of construction, you know, how a building looked at a specific point in time as well, at its specific location. The building's not proposed to be removed. The proposed arch entrance pays homage to the arch feature on the building when it served as a livery, but the detailing is altered to accommodate a more recent facade, which is the upper story that you see here, and is not therefore a true reconstruction. So as you can see, it doesn't fall neatly into any of those four categories. And while the proposal deeply respects the history of the building and again, the research is to be commended, it does not meet the guidelines as staff interprets them, and it certainly does not appear to meet any of the treatment methods prescribed by the Secretary of Interior by which the guidelines are based. And so for that reason, it is not recommended that the commission approve the proposal. There is also a portion of the proposal where the applicant is seeking to paint the upper facade to create the appearance of a distinct facade on this two storefront building. As I mentioned, it's one building, two storefronts. We'd like to paint the left side where this portion is. The guidelines do recommend against the painting of masonry walls that have not previously been painted unless the walls have been extensively patched or repointed, resulting in a patchwork of masonry surfaces, which does not appear to be the case here. So it is recommended the commission deny the storefront and facade alteration proposal because it's not in keeping with the recommendations of the guidelines or the SOI standards, and if issued a COA, that the application meet all the requirements of the Building and Neighborhood Services Department prior to issuance of a building permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the applicant please come forward?
Glad you guys got a snack so your blood sugar's up. Feeling good?
Chocolate.
Oh, good. Nice. Well, thank you again for considering this and listening to us. And I won't go through the full backstory again, but I do realize we don't fall neatly in the boxes that Amanda listed. So that's why we kind of come to you guys for your guidance and expertise. I think what we're trying to do is create a facade that honors the history of the building as well as the historic fabric of downtown Franklin. We're pulling from most of the livery elements from back in the 1890s, while we're also trying to kind of, be a good neighbor. Again, we kind of don't have anything left from the original building. There really is nothing of the facade from the original structure that remains. Some of the window placements are still there. The one small window on the left side is kind of, in generally its original location, but again, it's been altered as well. And then we don't, it was the whole building with Waltons, so this is kind of where we're left. right now. So we've tried to take your comments through the last 3 or 2 DRC meetings, integrate things that are kind of more traditional for the facade design that you all mentioned you like to see from that 1930s time period, right? Trying to add some transoms, thicker moles, and then just the way that we're kind of massing the building. We've still got, there's some things in here that don't fall neatly into those 1930s facades where we have the secondary entrance right next to the primary entrance and what's existing. So that kind of is another challenge that we're trying to do with. But again, ultimately, our goal here is to do something that all of Franklin can be proud of, that we can be proud of, that respects the historic character of downtown Franklin and hopefully adds to that, as well as provides a memory of what was there before, even though it is not an exact replica of what was there before. So with that said, that's kind of what we're coming to you with, and so that's what we're hoping we can consider tonight.
Okay, thank you. Are there any citizens wish to comment on the application? Hearing none, we need a motion from the commission.
Mr. Chair, I move to deny issuance of a certificate of appropriateness for the storefront and facade alterations proposal based on staff analysis recommendations dated May the 9th, 2022.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Is that Mary? Is that? Thank you, Mary. All right, discussion.
If I could start, this is beautiful. What you have come up with is really beautiful. Here are the problems that I see, is that the arched opening that you've created does not, it doesn't resonate with the livery stable arch because it's much shorter. And also, it's not consistent with Main Street, from my point of view. And the reason I say that is because that new opening that you are proposing is not in keeping with the rest of Main Street, from my opinion. Additionally, from the pictures you provided, which are great, it's obvious to me that it's been in sort of this form as we find it today for well over 80 years. And so in some ways, I think as a commission, we need to treat it historic in its own right, even though certainly it doesn't look like the 1920s version. So for those reasons, I support the motion as presented.
Can I ask a clarification about why the front facade doesn't work with the rest of downtown Franklin as far as the entry?
Well, because if you compare it, for example, you provided pictures, I think, of the Binks Outfitters, which would be, some people would say, well, there is consistency between those two. But if you notice, the arch on that is much higher, which would resonate in terms of that livery stable concept. But to me, the bigger problem here is that if this building, as is, dates back to 80 years, then that's the new historic building that we have to work with. Because we're not talking about, from my understanding, you're not talking about a complete rehabilitation to its original livery stable.
And I think
facade.
that's maybe where I think I need to correct it. There's really nothing left from that 80 years either. Maybe the general idea that there's a wooden storefront is there, but really from the 40s, all that was gone. That was stripped away in the, I think the 70s, maybe. Really, that facade right there is probably closest to what you're seeing with some of the details, but then that was gone. If you look in the pictures from the 70s and 80s, really, that was all stripped off, and Amanda, if you can go to let me see which page it was. Page 5. Right, I mean, that was all gone in the 80s, right? I mean, the window was there, but, and maybe just the kind of the input, but that was, again, before there was a secondary entrance to get upstairs and things like that. So I think a lot of that kind of 1930s facade that we reminisce about and we talk about as being kind of what downtown Franklin wants to be right now, that was all stripped away. None of that exists anymore, or didn't exist for probably 50 years or more. So what we're trying to do is just bring that back. I mean, what's existing now is a replica of what someone thought a Franklin facade should be. It's not a historic facade in and of its own self. The brick is not from the original building. The windows have all been changed. Just things like that. So that's where, I understand with you guys that we want this to look not completely foreign, or that we're not just creating something from nothing, right? So that's kind of why we've spent so much time referencing and researching what the history of this is and what downtown Franklin looks like. So, the recesses of entrances and things like that is historically accurate with the rest of the character of those styles of facades. I would love to say that we had a lot of way to make this arch taller and bigger and things like that. But again, we're kind of stuck with, it is an old building, and as all buildings have done in Franklin, they have evolved over time, and they're not following kind of a linear trajectory of, they don't all evolve the same way, right? And we respond to different situations as they have been given to us from the past. So that's kind of what we're stuck with here, or not stuck with, but that's kind of where we are, right? We don't have, and as we talked about in some other things, there are limits to structurally what you can do, to what you can spend on something, and things like that. So being able to copy what some other places have done is not always the right thing. And I wanted to say there are some other arched buildings downtown, 236, the Roberts Building on the square, 234, the Onyx and Alabaster Building on the square, 230, the Fifth Third Bank on the square has arched entrance. I don't have these in the package, Amanda, I'm sorry. 427 West Main, which is next door to Binks, has a little arched entrance. 418 West Main, which is those little smaller ones and things like that. So I don't, based on what we've seen, that's a fair amount of arched entrances that happen along Main Street. So I don't feel like this is out of place or out of context. You're correct that it doesn't match exactly what a livery stable did back in the day. But again, that building is gone, but the memory of it is here, right? So that's what we're trying to kind of honor through this.
Okay, let's get some other comments.
So you missed a few arches. So the Presbyterian Church has arches.
Okay.
And Sweet Cece's has an arch.
Okay.
The one thing that's common to all those arches that you've mentioned is they're all brick arches. There's not one of them that is a wooden arched facade. So this would be very unique for town. And if I were a tourist coming to town and knowing a little something about historical architecture, and I said, man, that's a beautiful rendering of a facade. But now I'd look at what's on each side of it, and I'd say, well, it doesn't quite fit. I wonder when that was built. It would really throw up a lot of question marks for me. And I think that it is out of context for that area. We have two photographs that show what it did look like. So we kind of know that. And what we're seeing here is a reimagining of that. And I agree with Ms. Markford. It's a beautiful design. I just don't think that it reflects the character of what we know Main Street to be. So I see that as a point, and then I'm concerned about precedent. So I think about others that would come before us and want to reimagine their facades because it looks better maybe than what was there already. And even things that have been changed over time. And change over time is part of it. So those would be some of the reasons that I would not be able to support it.
All right, who else?
Mr.
Mary?
Chair, the reimagining is what concerns me. And then just the other arches were all historic. They were there, part of the buildings. And this building has been made with, I guess, it was made to modernize the whole building. Nothing was left undone. And so now going back and we're going to reimagine it, and we're just going to reimagine part of it. I can't support the reimagining and then in the way it's done. I just don't think it's true to the architecture of Main Street and what we've tried to do of managing change over time. So I'm going to support staff's comments on this.
Mr. Chair,
Tyler?
I want to try and quantify, I think, some of these comments for them a little bit. When I look at the precedent photos that you've supplied, and just in general, any type of downtown Main Street, the goal was to get as much storefront as possible. I mean, you were vying for that real estate. And I think when I look at your rendering against some of these images, the density of paneling and wall versus fenestration is a little off in my mind. And I know you've got a column you've got to contend with, but that's part of the challenge. But the column's not 4 feet wide, or 3.5, whatever that is. And so when I look at even Walton's next door, any of these other images, typically what we see is something very transparent at ground level and much less transparent upstairs. And I think that's where I struggle with it, is I look at it and say that the density from a figure ground, a transparency standpoint for a downtown walking, streetscape is too dense. And even the amount of paneling that's above the arch is just, it seems heavy-handed in terms of the paneling and woodwork. And I think that may be what some of us are seeing. You look at the images and go, it doesn't look like a storefront. I think it doesn't have a lot of glass in comparison. I mean, it looks like less than 50%.
I don't mean to be argumentative. I would just love to make a point on that. Can you go to page 4 for me? So I do want to stress that I think that that's probably not an accurate understanding of the building. So if you look, there's a tree in this one. That's a little hard, but there is, on the left side, that large column that you see, there is a masonry column behind there, which is what informs that. But kind of if you were to follow this around, really, I mean, there's a huge column between those two entry doors, right? You've got the original entry door and then the one to the left of it. And then that space between Walton's and the entry door on the right, I mean, there's a significant amount of solid in what's there right now. So I think we've got at least as much as what's existing, or maybe more, considering how much larger we've made that entry arch. Again, in this one, above those windows, above those entry doors, it's all solid, at the transom, above the transom. So
I mean,
we've
even
tried
that
really
image, I
hard.
see a lot more glass in that than even your rendering.
I think there is a lot more plate glass in that rendering, but as far as fenestration goes, I think they're probably pretty comparable.
I have a comment.
All right.
And I'll be quick, but I think, it is, what you've designed is really attractive. I guess my comment would go back to, we've got historical photographs, here from the Tennessean in October of 1890, and then we've got that terrific 1940s photograph. And what I would just, with the review appeal shown, what I would go back to is, from the historic guidelines, we're not just looking at 1890s or 1940s, but for better or worse, 1972 is right in there with it too, at the 50-year mark. And so I've just not seen anything, or I don't think maybe I've missed it, but I don't think we've been provided any information that kind of shows at least akin to the current configuration wasn't where we were in the early 1970s or late 1960s.
So you're looking for a picture of what it looked like then?
Well, I guess I'm just saying, if we're gonna step away from that, from where we are right now,
Sure.
for better or worse, I feel like we need to have something showing us that is not consistent with that 50-year mark, that it's not where it was. Because whether I like 1940s or 1890s better than 1972, I just am cognizant of that 50-year mark in the guidelines. So. And then as far as painting the brick, I just have as much as that looks great, I just have a huge concern about that, given the guidelines.
And we totally understand that as well, and we, obviously, it's probably a moot point at this point in the conversation, but, we did include an image of it without it being painted, and we would have considered that as well. This design is not predicated on having to paint the brick. But I
It looks really
understand.
great painted, but I just think, given
Yeah.
the guidelines, that's a.
And there
That's a
is a
tough
lot of
one.
precedent for not just this project, but, downtown, if you look down the streetscape, there are a significant number of painted brick buildings in the central commercial core. Now, when you get out and you're in houses and things like that, we totally agree with and respect the idea of painting a historic brick as being a no-no.
I guess I would
but-
just say I suspect that painted brick is predating the historic guidelines.
I'm
That's,
sure
you
it
know,
probably
got that.
is.
Okay, let's go, any other comments on this? We've got a motion on the floor. Any other comments on the motion to deny? Then, all in favor of the motion to deny, please raise your hand. All right, it's unanimous.
Understood. Thank you for your time and your comments. I really appreciate the effort
you.
you guys put into it.
Okay, next item is consideration of alterations, window replacement, and porch configuration or reconfiguration at 903 West Main Street.
Thank you. The application is for the alteration of windows on the front facade and front porch reconfiguration. The subject property is an 1850s two-story house. I'm going to go to some of the more meaningful front facade photographs, as you can see here. It does have a pedimented portico with 4 columns. The windows on both the first and second floor are on either side of the portico. And it is known as the Bennett Gathman House. I think we're all very familiar with this house. It is a contributing resource to the Hinchyville Historic District. Now, the windows on the front facade are proposed to be replaced. It's a total of 6. The applicant believes the windows were replaced in or around the 1990s, making the windows non-historic. The guidelines recommend that the windows have historic profile and dimension if they are to be replaced. So working through this with staff, we paid particular note to what is there. And again, I'm going to have to close this and open it back up. My apologies. The windows to be replaced are vinyl. And that's why we feel comfortable with the proposal. If you zoom in here, and I did look at them more closely, you can see they're vinyl windows. The applicant's proposing to replace these with a Marvin Ultimate Wood series with a 6/6 light profile, all wood exterior. Although the exact window specifications have not been provided, Marvin Ultimate Wood has a number of different grille patterns and also has true or all divided light, simulated divided light, and grills between the glass. And so that was not defined specifically by the applicant, but we do know that the proposed window replacement would be this type of window where you can see it appears to be an SDL with all wood exterior. The porch configuration, I'm going to go back to a different photograph here. You can see this is on the right side of the porch as viewed from the street. The portico is in the center, and you can see the original photography of the portico in the center. At some point in time, the slab for the portico was extended to go all the way across the facade on either side of the portico, which is centered on the house. And so this photograph probably shows it best. The applicant is proposing to remove these slabs from either side of the portico. The guidelines recommend preserving and maintaining the location and configuration of original porches and using historical or architectural evidence to support the previous existence of a porch. And so based on the historic photograph, we know that removing these sections on either side of the center is appropriate in keeping what was there historically and with the architectural style of the building. The applicant wants to remove these due to some worries about settlement, I believe, and how it connects to the facade. I'll let her speak a little bit more to that, but the alterations could be supported. So with that, it is recommended that the commission approve the proposed alterations to the window and porch with the following: that the applicant either utilize the authentic divided light or simulated divided light patterns with an OG or Ovolo bead profile, which is the sticking option for the windows that we looked at on the Marvin Ultimate Wood series window specifications on the website. Those window specs would need to be returned to staff prior to the work commencing, and that the two portions of the porch to be removed would need to be done so there's no impact to the historic building. The new porch dimensions must be returned to staff for approval prior to the work commencing as well. Although it is clear from this lower photograph, the applicant does intend to have a little bit of a porch on either side of the columns before it's severed, as would be historically appropriate. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the applicant please come forward?
I know y'all are tired and ready to
Sorry.
get out of here.
Sorry you had to wait.
No, it's okay.
Yeah,
Thank you very
are you
much.
Jenny?
I'm Jenny, yes.
Okay.
Nice to meet you all. And I'm sorry, Amanda, one thing I was going to clarify on the windows, we would be doing the old historic, so it'd be the sides too.
Yes, that's.
Sorry about that, so.
I realized when I said the front facade is that there's not 6 windows.
Yeah, so it's basically the old section of the house would be, all the windows would be the new wood windows. The vinyl would be replaced. They're actually leaking right now on the inside, and so we're anxious to get the water intrusion remedied for that. So on the windows, I really have nothing else to add other than that. On the porch, really not too much else to add to that as well, other than to say that right now that concrete butts right up against the home there, and the wood. So you can see in some of the photographs where the wood actually would go down a couple planks even below where this porch was installed. And so, we're going to keep, obviously, we don't want to interrupt the siding as much as possible. There could be, we don't know what we're going to find when we pull that concrete away. But the goal would be obviously to just reinforce and secure all around that front portion of the house. And then that also will allow the house to breathe a little better, because I do think the house breathes at that bottom, that very bottom board, so the moisture airflow can be opened back up. But the porch itself is crumbling. It's concrete, and it's just kind of crumbling. So we knew we were going to have to do something with it. And when we started down the road of figuring out what to do, that's when it was brought to our attention that historically that porch was not even there. And we pulled out the photos and we're like, well, it wasn't there. So we thought we would go that approach first, as opposed to having to tear it all out and just re-put another concrete porch in. That to us just seemed like the logical way to go with it, but obviously open to whatever you all, think about that. But that's all I have to add there, so.
Okay. I don't think there's anybody left to comment, unless this gentleman would like to comment some more. All right.
Mr. Jones is here with Jenny. He's the contractor for the project.
Got it. Okay, Commission, we need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve with conditions the issuance of a COA for the alterations to the windows and porch configuration.
Or is there a second?
Second that.
Thank you, Tyler. Okay, discussion.
So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to open discussion. First, I'll say congratulations on the old Gaffman house.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
There are only 2 Greek Revival homes on West Main. There are 3, but only 2 that are original. 2 West Main, and you have one of them. So
It's a
that's
wonderful
great.
house.
So I wanted to ask you, so are there any original windows remaining on the house anywhere?
There is not. We do know that the windows were pulled out at some point, and we were hoping, we talked to the person who actually, pulled them out, and he thought he might be able to track them down. And he has not responded back to us on that. But we do know from talking to him that the 6-panel wood was what was there, basically, it's very similar to the way it looks now with the vinyl, but they were 6-panel even in the original. But we don't know where the windows are, but there's no originals left.
That would be typical on a house of this vintage, 6/6. Be very typical. It's a shame that they got rid of at least the originals. Didn't put one in the attic. That'd been great.
Yeah, I know. There's nothing there, so unfortunately.
So for me, when I look at a house, I mean, there are three things I always see. I see the building material, what's it made of? Wood, brick, stone. Because I always see the roof, we see the roofing material, and then we see the windows. Now, for me, I see the windows first, because I guess I'm always wondering, what's inside? And I think all of us are like that. And then when you look outside, the windows give you light, air, all that. They're very important in historic structures. And so I'm willing to support the motion as staff recommends. But what I'd like to suggest is that Marvin windows are great windows, especially for new construction. And what happens often is that with historic structures, the openings of the windows, the actual window openings have to be somehow altered, filled in. In this case, I don't think they would actually be expanded. We wouldn't want that, but they have to accommodate that window. And it's better, I think, for a window if it can actually accommodate the opening. And what I'd like to just ask is that you consider is that there are custom-made windows that are made of wood and are rot-resistant material. And we have actually a couple of great millwork places in Nashville that actually do it. Stevens is one of them. Vintage Millwork is another. But you can get true divided light. And I'm just thinking if you did that, and you can you can either make double pane choices for your true divided light or historic glass. I mean, that's all up to you. But I think it would, I know you care about this house, and I think it would really make it stand out, curb appeal, to have that kind of treatment done for the windows.
I do know, and yes, completely understand and agree. I do know that we've had, and Noel can help a little bit with this, with the work that they've done to actually very carefully measure. So they came out and did specific measurements on every single window with the goal of ensuring that we get the tightest and closest fit so that we don't have big gaps on either side. And then we've talked through exactly how to kind of trim out that once you put the window in, that you could have a little bit of space there, that we've kind of talked through how to get it back to exactly what it would have been. So we've very carefully looked at what's there and talked through how to basically put it in to be exactly as close to what it is now. In terms of the other style windows, I'll have to just look at who you're suggesting, to educate myself on that. I'm not sure
Yeah, and that's all
anything
I'm
about it.
just suggesting is just look more into it. You may not choose those people, you may choose someone else.
Right.
But it might give you something, because what happens with like the pre-manufactured windows, where they meet, called the meeting rails, they don't quite meet the same as the historic ones did. And the stiles and the rails that you see on the actual window sashes are thicker, they're a little different. So like I said, I'm all for going with what the staff, because these are not original windows.
Right.
But I think you'd do yourself and the house a big favor, and I don't think it would cost that much more.
Okay. Well, I'll definitely will look into that for sure. Excellent.
Mr. Chair, I would say Brian and I went to a workshop, so it's all fresh on my mind now, all the nuances of historic windows you cannot believe, but when you see the real right thing, you do see it. So I would urge you, especially on the front, to at least consider. I had no consciousness of how many nuances there were to historic windows, and I thought I knew, but when I heard the speaker that we heard, I realized that there's just so many little details, but when it's right, it's right.
Right, yes. Excellent. Well, I will definitely look into the companies that you have recommended.
One question. I'm looking at the front of the house. I see 4 windows, and we've talked about 6. Where are the other 2?
They're on the sides of the house.
One on each side?
There's actually
I looked in this old picture, there were
1,
2 on one
2,
side, I think.
3, 4, 5. There's 4 in the front and 5 on, the rest. So there'll be 9, that'd be 9 total windows.
All right, so we're talking about 9 windows to replace, right? Not
Yes.
6, okay.
That's right. I got 1, 2, 3.
And I think I might have, when I was reading this, that might have been my mistake on the front.
There's 10.
I was just reading
10.
it just
There's
now,
10.
and I saw 6 pane right here, and I think I just read
I
6.
saw the 6 panes, I saw 6 windows,
Yeah.
and I'm
It's
looking at...
basically the old section of the whole
All right.
old, the
Okay, all
early
right.
1850s
So we're
part,
looking
not the
at 10
1920s
windows
part.
to be replaced?
Yes, that's
All right.
correct.
That's good, okay.
And Mr. Chair, this is one of the houses
I'm-
in Franklin.
I'm
It just is.
Very familiar with it.
So my next question has to do with the porch. Is it wood siding on the house, or is it vinyl?
It's wood.
It is wood, okay, well, good. And you're right, I'm sure there could be some water damage happening to the seals, the way that porch is done.
That's what
And I would
we're-
fully support
Yes.
what you want to do with that.
Excellent.
Any other comments?
Just gonna, my only thought, I see these seams in the slab. I don't see a picture necessarily right up next to the columns, but hopefully there's a really obvious place to cut this and rip it out that looks right.
Well, we're going to replace,
The
the
original
whole thing
slab,
has to
too.
be redone.
Okay.
So all that old concrete's going to come out.
Okay.
And then we will have to redo that front portico, section.
Okay,
I guess I
good.
missed
Kathy,
that.
you had a question or comment?
I'm going back to the windows. In the brochure, you show us the new Marvin window, and it's 6/6. But when I look at the Exhibit E, the old picture, it looks like to me that it is 6 in the upper and a solid in the lower.
I had the same thought, but then I think the windows may
Are
be
open.
open.
I
Are
think
they
they're-
open?
They're open.
I mean, that's because I studied that
Yes,
too, Kathy.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're open. That's why I looked at that too, but I do think they are
I
open.
can see it
Well,
shadowed
I
in
don't
just a
see
little
them
bit.
double ghosted behind the upper, but,
In one of the side windows is where I think I satisfied myself that it was 6/6.
That is a summer photograph. All the
Yeah.
leaves
it
are
is a
out.
summer photograph, that's right.
Okay, anything else? Ready to vote? All in favor of the motion, then, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you all
Sorry you had
so
to
much.
wait.
No, that's okay.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Move to adjourn?
Yeah.
And
but
you
any-
all, I just got to say this, Noel is working on the Carruthers Farmstead House for the city.
Oh, good. Good, good, good.
Yay.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
Do we have any other business?
Oh, is there other business, Amanda?
No, I did want to note that I regret that I couldn't go to the window discussion myself. It sounds really interesting. I did contact Justin Heskew, who was the person who presented. He's new staff preservation specialist at Tennessee Historical Commission. And I did mention to him that I'm hopeful to talk to him and see about, presenting some training opportunities to you all as a group. So we'll work on that and see what we can do.
And Mr. Chair, from what we heard at that workshop, you might want to also talk to the certified local government person about him coming.
Yes,
Yes.
that there is a new certified local government coordinator as well. Her name is Ellen. We have a lot of staffing changes at the state right now, so I'm still meeting everyone myself, but yes, definitely.
And I would be happy for you to share my notes with the others.
All right, motion to adjourn?
Second. Yes.
Yeah.
I already
Brian-
said it.
Oh, okay, sorry. Tyler and Brian, all in favor, please stand. We're dismissed.